Most people think karma is instant. They think if someone hurts you, life should punish them immediately. They think justice is loud, dramatic, and visible. But what if I told you the most dangerous kind of karma is the one you don't see coming? What if I told you that the people who wronged you, laughed at you, walked away like nothing happened, are already paying for it in ways you can't see? And here's the part that will change how you see everything. Karma doesn't chase them, it becomes them. They carry it in their mind, in their choices, in the person they are slowly turning into. You don't need revenge, you don't need to prove anything, you don't even need to wait, because while you're rebuilding, rising, and becoming stronger, something invisible is already working in your favor. And when karma finally hits them back, it won't be loud, it won't be dramatic, but it will be unforgettable. Silence is the part that breaks most people. You're taught to believe that justice is immediate, that consequences are visible, that if someone hurts you, something bad should happen to them right away. You're taught that fairness is loud, that karma is dramatic, that life keeps receipts in bold letters. But real life doesn't work like that. Real life works in silence. When someone betrays you, manipulates you, lies to you, or walks away without accountability, there is often nothing that happens on the surface. They seem fine, they seem happy. They move on, they post smiles, successes, victories, they act untouched, unaffected, unpunished, and you are left with the questions: did they really get away with it? Was I the only one who suffered? Does life even care? This is the psychological battlefield, the silence before karma strikes. Silence is uncomfortable because it forces you to sit with uncertainty. It forces you to confront your desire for control, for validation, for fairness. It forces you to confront the reality that you may never see justice with your own eyes, and most people can't handle that. They spiral, they obsess, they stalk social media, they replay conversations, they rehearse arguments that will never happen, they wait for signs of downfall like it's proof that their pain mattered. But silence is not absence, silence is incubation. In psychology, there's a concept called delayed consequence. When outcomes are delayed, the mind struggles to connect action with result. People think nothing happened, so it didn't matter. They think the system is broken. They think the universe didn't notice. But delayed consequences are often the most powerful. Every decision a person makes shapes who they become. Every betrayal changes their identity. Every manipulation rewires their brain. Every lie strengthens a habit. And habits build character. Character builds destiny. You don't see this process happening, they don't see it either. They think they're winning because there's no immediate backlash, but what's happening quietly is far more dangerous. They are becoming someone who cannot sustain healthy relationships, who cannot build real trust, who cannot experience deep peace. Silence is where the transformation begins. For you, silence is where strength is built. For them, silence is where consequences are growing roots. Patience is a psychological weapon. When you are wronged, your instinct is to react, to confront, to defend, to demand answers. Your brain craves closure because uncertainty is stressful. It wants a narrative where the bad person is punished and the good person is rewarded. But patience rewires you. When you resist the urge to react, you regain control over your nervous system. You teach your brain that you are not governed by impulses. You teach yourself discipline, emotional regulation, and resilience. You learn to sit with discomfort without self-destructing. That is power. While they continue acting on impulse, chasing gratification, avoiding responsibility, you are learning restraint. You are building psychological endurance. You are stepping out of chaos. And here's the paradox. The very silence that feels unfair is the training ground that makes you dangerous. Silence forces you to focus inward. It forces you to rebuild. It forces you to become intentional. Meanwhile, the person who hurt you continues on autopilot, unaware that their patterns are setting the stage for their own limitations. They might appear successful. They might appear admired. They might appear untouched. But internally, patterns are forming. People who betray often struggle with intimacy. People who manipulate often struggle with authenticity. People who lie often struggle with self-worth. These are not poetic metaphors. These are psychological realities. You cannot consistently harm others without damaging your own psychological architecture. The brain learns what it practices. If it practices selfishness, it becomes selfish. If it practices deception, it becomes suspicious and paranoid. If it practices cruelty, it becomes isolated. Silence is where these patterns solidify. You don't hear it, you don't see it, but it's happening. And the longer nothing happens, the more deeply these traits become embedded. Karma, in this sense, is not an external force. It is the internalization of behavior. You think silence means nothing is happening. Silence actually means everything is happening. There's another side to this. Silence teaches you patience with outcomes you cannot control. That is one of the highest forms of psychological maturity. When you stop demanding immediate justice, you detach from the need to manage life's narrative. You stop trying to control other people's destinies. You focus on your own. That shift is subtle but profound. It changes your energy, it changes your decisions, it changes how you carry yourself. You become less reactive, less desperate, less entangled, and paradoxically, that is when you start to win. Because while you're waiting for karma, karma is waiting for consistency. While you're waiting for justice, justice is being constructed through patterns and probabilities. While you're waiting for answers, answers are being shaped by behavior over time. Silence is the long game. Most people can't play the long game because they need emotional closure. They need to see the villain fall. They need validation that they were right. But the most powerful individuals understand something different. Life is not a courtroom. It is a system of feedback loops. What you do becomes who you are. Who you are determines what you attract, build, and sustain. So when someone hurts you and seems untouched, the silence is not proof of injustice. It is proof that the system is still processing data. And processing takes time. The silence before karma strikes is not for them. It is for you. It teaches you patience, detachment, emotional mastery. It forces you to grow without external validation. It trains you to become stable in uncertainty, and in that quiet, invisible training, you are becoming someone they can never affect again. That is the real power of silence. There is a law that operates whether you believe in it or not, whether you acknowledge it or ignore it, whether you respect it or try to cheat it. It doesn't care about your opinions, your excuses, or your intentions. It only responds to what you do. Every action creates a reaction. Every choice creates a consequence. Every pattern creates a destiny. This is the law of cause and effect, and it is always at work, even when it's invisible. Most people think karma is mystical, spiritual, cosmic. They imagine the universe keeping a moral scorecard and sending lightning bolts when someone behaves badly. That's a comforting idea. But it's not how reality works. The truth is both simpler and more terrifying. You don't need a supernatural force to deliver consequences. Your own behavior is enough. Every time someone lies, they train their brain to lie again. Every time someone manipulates, they reinforce manipulation as a strategy. Every time someone betrays, they normalize betrayal in their identity. The brain is a pattern-making machine. It becomes what it repeatedly practices. That means actions are not isolated events, they are votes for the kind of person you are becoming. And who you become determines everything. When someone chooses selfishness, they don't just hurt others, they narrow their future. They reduce their capacity for connection, for trust, for meaning. They might gain something in the short term, money, power, validation, but they lose something that no external success can replace: the ability to experience genuine human connection and inner peace. Cause and effect is relentless. If you treat people as disposable, you build a life where relationships are unstable and shallow. If you prioritize ego over integrity, you build a reputation that collapses under pressure. If you chase pleasure over purpose, you build a future that feels empty even when it looks impressive. People often ask, why do bad people succeed? The better question is, for how long and at what cost? Cause and effect doesn't always operate on a schedule you can see. Sometimes the reward comes first, and the cost comes later. Sometimes the cost comes quietly, internally, where no one else can see it. A person can be wealthy and lonely. They can be admired and deeply insecure. They can be powerful and profoundly unhappy. These are not coincidences. These are outcomes. Unseen forces are always shaping reality. Psychological patterns, social feedback loops, habits, reputations, micro-decisions, these are the invisible currents that carry people towards certain destinations. No one wakes up one day and randomly destroys their life. They follow a trajectory built from thousands of small, seemingly insignificant choices. And the same law applies to you. Every time you choose discipline over impulse, you shape a different future. Every time you ooze integrity over convenience, you reinforce a powerful identity. Every time you choose growth over revenge, you redirect your trajectory. Cause and effect is neutral. It doesn't care who started it. It only cares what you do next. When someone hurts you, it's easy to focus on their cause and their effect. You want their actions to boomerang back to them in a visible, satisfying way. You want the universe to make a public statement. But the most important cause and effect in your life is not theirs. It's yours. If you let resentment consume you, that resentment becomes a cause, and the effect is a life spent mentally chained to someone who doesn't even think about you. If you let anger define you, the effect is impulsive decisions that sabotage your own progress. If you let revenge drive you, you become emotionally reactive, predictable, and controlled by the very person you despise. That is the hidden danger. Focusing on their karma can become your karma. The law of cause and effect is impersonal, but it is fair in a brutal, mathematical way. It doesn't punish people for moral reasons. It simply multiplies patterns. If someone consistently makes destructive choices, those choices accumulate until the system becomes unstable. Relationships break. Opportunities disappear. Trust erodes. Mental health deteriorates. Eventually, the structure collapses under the weight of its own design. You may never see the collapse. You may never get an apology. You may never witness the regret. But that doesn't mean the equation isn't running. Think of it like gravity. You don't need to believe in gravity for it to work. You can ignore it, deny it, mock it, but step off a cliff. And gravity will have the final word. Cause and effect is the gravity of human behavior. And here's the part that should empower you. You are not just subject to this law. You can use it deliberately. You can design your life by designing your habits. You can shape your identity by shaping your actions. You can build your destiny by stacking intentional causes. Every day you are voting for a future version of yourself. Do you vote for discipline or comfort? For honesty or convenience? For growth or stagnation? Those votes compound. While others rely on hope, you can rely on systems. While others chase luck, you can build probability. While others wait for karma, you can engineer outcomes. The unseen forces at work are not just cosmic, they are psychological, behavioral, social, and structural. They are quiet, cumulative, and unstoppable. You don't need to watch someone else's downfall to feel justice. You need to understand that no one escapes the architecture they build with their actions. And you don't need to fear karma. You need to respect cause and effect. Because in the end, life doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you repeatedly do. The moment someone hurts you, something primal wakes up inside you. You want justice. You want balance. You want them to feel what you felt. Revenge feels natural. It feels powerful. It feels like reclaiming control. Your mind starts building scenarios, arguments, fantasies of seeing them regret everything. And for a brief moment, it feels good. But here's the truth. Most people never confront. Revenge feels like power, but it is actually surrender. The moment your life becomes centered around someone else's downfall, you have handed them control. They are no longer just a person who passed through your life. They have become a permanent resident in your mind. Your emotions, your thoughts, your energy are now orbiting them. That is not strength. That is captivity. Growth, on the other hand, is silent. It doesn't feel dramatic. It doesn't give you instant emotional satisfaction. It requires discipline, patience, and emotional maturity. But growth is the only path that returns your power to you. When you seek revenge, you stay psychologically tied to the past. When you seek growth, you step into the future. Revenge keeps you looking backward, replaying scenes that cannot be rewritten. Growth forces you to look forward toward a version of yourself that no longer needs closure. This is not about being passive or weak. It's about being strategic with your energy. Your brain has limited emotional resources. Every thought you spend on resentment is a thought not spent on building your life. Every emotional surge you give to anger is energy stolen from your goals, your relationships, your purpose. Revenge is expensive. Growth is an investment, and the return on growth compounds in ways revenge never can. When you channel pain into discipline, you transform trauma into structure. When you channel anger into ambition, you turn emotional chaos into progress. When you channel betrayal into self-respect, you rewrite your standards and boundaries. This is where real power begins. You stop trying to prove your worth to people who couldn't see it. You stop chasing validation from people who couldn't give it. You stop trying to be understood by people who never listened. You redirect all of that energy inward. Growth is not glamorous. It's uncomfortable. It's lonely. It's quiet. It requires you to confront your flaws, your blind spots, your emotional patterns. It requires you to take responsibility for your healing, even when you didn't cause the damage. That feels unfair. It is unfair, but it is also freedom. Revenge keeps you dependent on their reaction. Growth makes you independent of their existence. Think about this. If someone betrayed you, what would hurt them more, seeing you obsessed with their downfall or seeing you indifferent, successful, and untouchable? Most people think revenge is loud confrontation. But the most destabilizing thing you can do to someone who wronged you is to outgrow them completely, to become someone who no longer fits into the version of you they once controlled. Growth shifts the narrative. You stop being the victim in the story. You become the architect of what happens next. And psychologically, that changes everything. You move from a reactive mindset to a proactive mindset. Instead of asking, why did they do this to me? You start asking, who do I want to become because of this? Pain becomes information. Betrayal becomes data. Loss becomes instruction. You start setting boundaries where you once tolerated disrespect. You start choosing people differently. You start recognizing patterns early. You start trusting yourself more. This is the unseen revenge that actually works, not because it hurts them, but because it heals you. There is a subtle arrogance in revenge. It assumes you are entitled to orchestrate someone else's downfall. It assumes you are the judge, jury, and executioner of fate. But growth is humble. Growth accepts that you cannot control others, only yourself. And controlling yourself is the highest form of power. When you stop chasing revenge, you free yourself from the emotional loop that keeps trauma alive. Neuroscience shows that rumination, replaying negative events, strengthens emotional pathways in the brain. The more you replay betrayal, the deeper it carves itself into your identity. Growth interrupts that loop. It gives your brain new pathways, discipline, learning, building, creating, connecting. Over time, those pathways become stronger than the ones built by pain. You don't forget what happened, you transcend it. Revenge keeps the wound open. Growth turns the wound into wisdom. And there is something else people rarely talk about. Revenge rarely feels as satisfying as imagined. When someone finally falls, when karma finally hits, when they finally suffer, you might feel a momentary surge of satisfaction. And then what? You're still you. Your life is still yours. Your problems are still yours. Their pain doesn't automatically create your peace. Growth does. When you invest in your health, your mind, your skills, your relationships, your purpose, you build a life that is structurally stronger. You create a future that is not dependent on someone else's failure. Your happiness becomes self-generated, not externally triggered. That is emotional sovereignty. And the irony is this: when you focus on growth, you often become the very outcome that karma would have delivered anyway. You become more disciplined, more grounded, more successful, more selective. Meanwhile, those who refuse to grow remain stuck in their patterns, reliving the same conflicts with different people. They are living the effect of their causes. You are designing new causes. This is why seeking growth is the ultimate power move. It shifts you from spectator to creator. It transforms pain into propulsion. It turns injustice into fuel. You stop asking for life to be fair. You start making life meaningful. And one day, without planning it, without waiting for it, without caring about it, you will realize that you no longer think about them. Not because they paid, but because you transcended the need for payment. That is when you win. Not when they fall. But when you rise so high, their fall becomes irrelevant. People imagine karma like a thunderstorm. They picture dramatic moments, public humiliation, sudden loss, visible downfall. They expect fireworks, justice served in front of an audience, a cinematic ending where everyone finally sees who was right and who was wrong. But that's not how it usually works. Real karma is quiet. Real karma is subtle. Real karma is precise. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't perform. It doesn't need witnesses. It simply arrives exactly where it hurts the most. When karma hits, it often looks ordinary from the outside. Someone loses a relationship, someone feels empty despite success, someone becomes isolated without understanding why, someone repeats the same destructive patterns and can't figure out why life feels stuck. No dramatic collapse, no public spectacle, just a slow, targeted realization that something is missing, broken, or lost. That's precision. Karma doesn't punish people in the way movies punish villains. It doesn't destroy them all at once. It erodes hem in the exact places their behavior created weakness. It hits their blind spots. It touches their inner architecture. Someone who betrays others may later find themselves unable to trust anyone. They live in constant suspicion, projecting their own behavior onto the world. That paranoia becomes their cage. Someone who manipulates people may find that no one truly knows them. They get attention, but not connection. They have conversations, but not intimacy. They are surrounded by people, yet profoundly alone. Someone who chases power at the cost of integrity may eventually reach the top and realize there is no one they respect there, and no one who truly respects them. These are not dramatic punishments. They are psychological and existential consequences, and they are precise. Karma often works through awareness. One day, a person looks around and notices patterns. They notice relationships that never last. They notice opportunities that disappear. They notice a recurring emptiness that no achievement fills. That awareness is the strike. It's not the loss itself, it's the realization of what was lost and why. Precision means the consequence fits the pattern. If someone devalues loyalty, karma often shows up as betrayal from others. If someone devalues honesty, karma often shows up as confusion and mistrust. If someone devalues empathy, karma often shows up as isolation. It's not random, it's patterned, and that's what makes it powerful. Most people never connect the dots. They blame the world, blame bad luck, blame other people. They don't see the invisible thread connecting their past behavior to their present reality, but the thread is there. And when Omione does see it, when the realization lands, that is the sharpest moment of karma. Because you cannot escape insight. You cannot unsee patterns once you see them. You cannot run from the awareness that you built this. That awareness can be crushing. Karma is precise in timing too. It often arrives when someone is least prepared, when defenses are down, when distractions fade. It may come during success, when there is no one to celebrate with. It may come during stillness, when there is no chaos to hide behind. Silence amplifies karma. Without noise, people hear their own thoughts. Without distractions, they feel their own emptiness. Without validation, they confront their own identity. And that confrontation is surgical. You might expect karma to come as a dramatic fall from grace. Instead, it often comes as a quiet erosion of meaning, a subtle dissatisfaction, a persistent sense that something is missing, that is more difficult to escape than a single catastrophe. A disaster ends, an internal void lingers. Karma also hits through other people's reactions, not through revenge but through boundaries. People distance themselves, trust diminishes, opportunities shrink, networks thin out. No one announces, "This is your karma." They just respond naturally to patterns. Behavior shapes reputation. Reputation shapes opportunity. Opportunity shapes life trajectory. That chain reaction is karma in motion. Precision means it rarely misses the target. It doesn't hit randomly, it hits structurally. It affects the areas directly influenced by past behavior. And here's the part most people miss. Karma doesn't need to be cruel to be effective. It just needs to be accurate. Losing respect, losing connection, losing purpose, losing inner peace. These are quiet consequences, but they are profound. From the outside, someone may look fine. They may be successful, wealthy, admired. But internally, they might be wrestling with dissatisfaction, distrust, loneliness, or regret. Those are not visible. They are felt, and felt consequences are often the deepest. Karma also works through repetition. Someone repeats the same mistakes, attracts the same conflicts, experiences the same endings with different people. They feel stuck in a loop they don't understand. That loop is precise feedback. It's life saying this pattern is still running. And unless someone changes the pattern, the loop continues. Karma is not vindictive, it's informational. It gives feedback through outcomes. If outcomes keep repeating, the system is pointing to the cause. This is why karma often feels personal, because it is tailored to behavior. It is shaped by identity. It is delivered through systems of cause and effect. No two people receive the same karma because no two people run the same patterns. And while you may be waiting for someone else's dramatic downfall, the reality is far more intimate. Karma often whispers RS instead of shouts. It speaks through emptiness, dissatisfaction, and awareness. The most precise moment is when someone realizes they cannot escape themselves. They can change cities. They can change relationships. They can change careers, but they cannot change the consequences of who they've trained themselves to be without deep effort. That realization is the strike. And while they are dealing with that, you are dealing with something else entirely. Growth, healing, expansion. You may never see their karma, you may never hear about it, you may never get closure, but precision does not require visibility. Karma doesn't need an audience, it only needs alignment between cause and effect. And in that alignment, quietly, relentlessly, it never misses. There is a moment in every healing journey where you realize something quietly, almost unexpectedly. The outcome you wanted no longer matters. You thought you wanted them to suffer. You thought you wanted an apology, a confession, a visible downfall. You thought their pain would be the proof that your pain mattered. But then something shifts. You start sleeping better. You start thinking less about them. You start caring more about your own life than their mistakes. And suddenly their pain feels irrelevant. That is victory. Most people are taught that justice means seeing the other person pay, that closure means confrontation, that peace comes from answers, explanations, and accountability from the people who hurt you. But real peace rarely comes from other people. It comes from a private decision you make when no one is watching. You decide to stop waiting. You decide to stop chasing. You decide to stop replaying. You decide that your life is too valuable to be spent as a reaction to someone else's behavior. That decision is not dramatic. It's quiet. It's personal. It's powerful. There is something seductive about imagining someone else's downfall. It makes pain feel meaningful. It gives the illusion of balance. It feels like justice is a scoreboard where suffering cancels suffering. But suffering does not cancel suffering, it multiplies. Their pain does not erase your experience. Their regret does not rebuild your time. Their karma does not automatically create your peace. Peace is built intentionally, daily, internally. Your victory is not that they finally understand what they did. Your victory is that you understand what you deserve. Your victory is not that they lose something, it's that you gain clarity, stability, and self-respect. Think about it. If someone who hurt you suddenly collapsed emotionally, would that automatically heal you? Would it erase memories? Would it undo the impact on your trust, your self-worth, your nervous system? Of course not. Peace is not a mirror of their pain. Peace is independence from their narrative. When you stop measuring your healing against their suffering, you step out of a toxic equation. You stop linking your emotional state to their life events. You stop waiting for a sign from the universe that they got what they deserved. You realize that the universe already gave you something more valuable. Distance, awareness, growth. Peace is when you wake up and they are not the first thought in your mind. Peace is when their name no longer triggers a physical reaction in your body. Peace is when their story no longer competes with your future. This is not indifference born from suppression. This is indifference born from integration. You have processed what happened. You have learned. You have adjusted. You have moved. And you no longer need anything from them to continue. There is also a deeper layer to this. Wanting someone else to suffer keeps you emotionally aligned with them. It keeps the relationship alive, just in a negative form. Your nervous system remains tuned to their existence. Your emotional radar stays focused on their trajectory. Peace is when that radar turns off, not because you forgot, but because you no longer need to monitor. This is why peace is so threatening to people who wronged you. They might expect anger, confrontation, obsession, retaliation. They might even be prepared to defend themselves, but they are rarely prepared for indifference. Indifference says, "You are no longer central to my story." Peace says, "You are no longer relevant to my decisions." That is the ultimate boundary. And here's the paradox. Peace is often invisible to others, but it is transformative to you. No one claps when you stop caring. No one celebrates when you emotionally detach. No one gives you a medal for choosing growth over revenge. But internally, everything changes. Your nervous system calms. Your decision-making becomes clearer. Your energy returns to your goals. Your relationships become healthier. You stop being driven by reaction and start being driven by intention. That is victory. People often ask, don't they deserve consequences? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But your peace does not depend on the verdict. You are not the courtroom. You are the witness to your own life. When you choose peace, you reclaim authorship. You stop outsourcing your emotional well-being to fate, karma, or someone else's downfall. You stop waiting for justice as a prerequisite for happiness. You become self-governing, and this is where the deepest empowerment lies. Peace does not mean you excuse what happened. Peace does not mean you minimize the harm. Peace does not mean you forget. Peace means you refuse to let the past dictate the architecture of your future. You keep the lesson, not the wound. You keep the memory, not the attachment. You keep the wisdom, not the resentment. And slowly, quietly, your life expands beyond the narrative of what they did. Your ambitions grow, your relationships deepen, your identity stabilizes, their story shrinks. One day you might hear about them. You might learn that karma did hit, that life corrected something, that consequences arrived, and you might feel nothing, no satisfaction, no revenge-fueled joy, just neutrality, because by then your life is full. Your victory is not in watching someone else fall. Your victory is in building something that stands regardless of who falls. Peace is a long-term strategy. It is disciplined. It is intentional. It is often misunderstood as weakness by people who equate loudness with power. But peace is not passive. Peace is controlled. Peace is chosen. It requires courage to stop fighting imaginary battles. It requires strength to let go of narratives that once defined you. It requires confidence to build a life that doesn't reverend all around proving anything to anyone. And when you do, something extraordinary happens. You stop needing karma. You stop needing closure. You stop needing validation. You become the outcome. That is the quiet, unshakable, irreversible victory. Not their pain, but your peace. In the end, karma is not a movie scene. It is not a dramatic fall, a public apology, or a moment of humiliation. It is a quiet equation that never stops running. Every choice shapes a future. Every action builds a person. Every pattern creates a destiny. Some people will never understand that until it's too late. Some people will never connect the dots. Some people will live their entire lives inside the consequences of who they chose to become, and you don't need to be there to see it. Your role is not to chase justice. Your role is not to wait for revenge. Your role is not to watch their story unfold. Your role is to build yours. Because while they are trapped in patterns, you can build discipline. While they are repeating cycles, you can create systems. While they are running from themselves, you can become someone you respect. Karma will do what karma does silently, precisely, inevitably, but your life does not need to pause while you wait for it. Walk forward, detach, grow, become unreachable. One day you'll realize something powerful. You no longer care what happened to them, not because they didn't matter, but because you matter more. That is when you know you've won. Not when they fall, not when they regret, not when they apologize. You win the moment you rise above the need for any of that. Stay disciplined, stay grounded, stay untouchable. Karma never misses, and nay, there should you